All right, boom, bang, bang, action. Cameraman, you're all sorted? Happy days. Welcome back to Follow Through with LVB. I'm here in the Cayman Islands at the Max 60, and my guest today is Mitchell McClenaghan. Welcome to the Follow Through podcast. How you going?
No, I'm good, actually. I had a nice little rest day yesterday, so the body's very thankful for that. But what a spot. What an amazing spot. I'm not much of a beach man, but I'll tell you what, I've been on the water every day.
Yeah, so just to set the picture here, we're in the reception area of our hotel. There might be a little bit of background music, a background noise if people are checking in at the moment, and the beach is just in front of us. It's about 100 meters away. There's a beach bar. The sun sets into the beach. It's hot. It's about 30. Feels like 30. Well, feels like 40, but I think it's only about 35 or 30. And then we have to play games. T10. This is what we're here for. So how have you survived this first few games?
Well, you've described that really well, and I'm glad this isn't live because my wife would be livid knowing that it's so beautiful out there. So on that front, I'm surviving that she doesn't know how beautiful it is. I haven't seen any photos home, otherwise she'd be very jealous. From a cricketing point of view, it's been awesome actually. When signing for this league, obviously I've been retired for a few years now. See some of the current players who are playing, who are quality players. I was very nervous, and I played a lot of cricket, and to still get those nerves, it was kind of nice actually. It kind of give you a bit of adrenaline, and I think this comp's great. I think the format's great. I love the 10 over format from a spectator point of view more than anything, because you can come one day and you see Narayan playing the first game, he gets nothing, he's one of your favourite players, but you know Russell or Warner or Colin Munro is going to be playing in the game after. You just know that you're going to get like your bang for your buck when you turn up. So I think it's a really good format for the advertisement of cricket around the world, and I hope it expands because I think it's a really good advertisement.
One of my highlights of this tournament has actually been seeing you running in. It's
yeah. What you didn't think I could run anymore?
Well, no. Here's the thing. It's like I've played against Mitch since I started. I started in 2010. Mitch, you started in 2007. So we played against each other: first class cricket, one day cricket, T20 cricket. Super competitor. Like every time we go up against Auckland or CD, you just knew Mitch was going to give 110% and he's going to be in your face. And it was just a dogfight every time. And obviously you retired international cricket a few years ago. You're still playing franchise cricket, but you haven't played as much recently.
Yeah.
And it was just cool to see, like the first time you ran in and your action and everything, I was like, this is Mitch. And it was still good pace, like competitive, swinging the ball, bowling your knuckleballs, bowling your off-cutters. I was like, I don't think I was at backward point. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This is great. Like I've finally getting the chance to play with Mitchell McClenaghan. So with 3 or 4, 5 games, 6 games in, it's been really cool to see.
Well, I guess that's one of the positives, right, of franchise cricket. You get to play with people who you've always watched on TV or you played against. We've played against each other a lot. And I think that's an amazing component of franchise cricket. And you watch guys and you see them do things against you on the field, and then one day or a month or two down the track, you can have the conversation about what they did against you a couple of months ago or a couple of years ago, and you can learn from them. So I think it's the greatest melting pot of knowledge for cricket, and it's great. You just get exposed to it all the time. So it's awesome. Look, I'm loving being back playing. It's been a bit of a shed for me the last couple of years. Put on some decent timber, mate. So 12 kgs down in the last couple of months just to kind of get back on the park. But it's been really enjoyable, and it's nice. It's particularly here, the Cayman Islands guys, like they're about to go into playing against Argentina, Brazil, Bermuda. They're coming to you trying to find little tips on how they can improve their national side to get through to the qualifiers and improve their international ranking. And that's what these little tournaments are really good for, trying to increase their knowledge, get them up to speed a lot faster than they probably would have if opportunities like this weren't around.
Yeah, exactly. And they get a chance to sit with Alex Hales, sit with yourself, Colin Munro, David Warner. These guys are now sharing the same tent, not dressing room at this stage, and they get to have conversations and talk about. I've seen a number of guys, get around other players and, how do you go about this, or what kind of ball do you bowl for this? And we've been talking about fields and, the pitch has been awesome here in the Caymans. So it's been definitely a batter's kind of paradise. So it's been a challenge as a bowler to try and work out what the best method to go about it. And the classic point, we had a discussion about a field yesterday in the game. I employed it, and then first ball, it worked. The cover got caught, and it was just cool. It was cool to collaborate with other guys, and the thing is, like, as long as I've played, you're still learning. You're still like trying to find those little nuggets. I thought at 33 that I'd be like a genius, and I'd know every ball, and I'd be able to execute everything that I ever want, and the game would just be easy, and I'd just be kind of, happy days, not get nervous, and just not get, gutted after loss or whatever it was. But it's not the case, is it?
No. I mean, the game evolves every year, particularly the short format, particularly T20. It's just going like back to the IPL every year when I was playing that. The first couple of games, the batters were doing something different, and you had to quickly evolve and change your plans or execute different deliveries just to try and keep up with the batters. And the white ball short format of the game evolves so quickly. So, it's fascinating. You've got to have those conversations with people. You've got to keep on learning. And also stuff that you knew 7-8 years ago, and those skills that you learnt, they come back around. Everything goes in cycles. So it gets to a point and then it comes back to a different cycle. Like the balls that you would have bowled 2-3 years ago, I know we've had a conversation about you maybe looking at bowling different deliveries, but you've also got to have those same skills and know when to use them, and just build your toolbox up, because they're going to be needed at some point against a certain player or certain opposition. So you're right, you're always evolving, you're always trying to get better, but you also got to know what you've learnt in the past and be able to revert back to that when you need it.
You're always one of those guys talking about toolbox, and I felt like you're a little bit ahead of your time, especially in New Zealand. Bowling knuckleballs, bowling different types of balls. You weren't, obviously you had the pace, you had the presence, you had the, hard back of a length, but then you also had funky fields, you had funky balls, and you weren't afraid to try something different to get ahead, and it definitely was successful. You went and played IPL, and you were, a key member of that Mumbai Indians period that I'm going to ask you about in a bit, but how did you go about developing those skills and then having the courage to actually try them in the game?
Yeah, really good question. I guess the positive part, like from my career, is that I've always kind of never been in a system. So even from a young age, from 14 playing for Auckland, I was a batter. I was an opening batter in under 14s, and then I didn't play under 15s, under 17s, under 19s. So I was always out on the edge and always never in the system. Yeah, I was in the odd academy and had some good coaches along the way with that stuff. But most of the time I was left to my own devices and always trying to find ways of breaking into sides or trying to prove yourself. And that was the motivation. So a lot of the fields that you're talking about or plans. So, for example, the 2015 World Cup squad, the one in New Zealand, the one-day World Cup squad, spoke to, at the time, my mentor from Howard Pakuranga, Kerry Walmsley, who played a few games for New Zealand, but a lot for Auckland, and is a great club man. And we basically had a conversation about what does New Zealand cricket not have at the time, looking at that squad, and what they didn't have was a Yorker bowler. They didn't have a death specialist. So it was trying to figure out how do you mold yourself to fit into the team or the place that you want to go. So for me, I wasn't a great Yorker bowler at that point in time, but I had to figure out how I could learn that skill, and it was a lot of practice, but also knowing that what fields, you talk about fields, what funky fields, which are funky fields are actually probably now normal fields. Yeah. The slice man was a big one, and the extra cover back was a big one. And learning where if I missed my Yorker on a wide Yorker line or a leg stump Yorker line, where was the ball going to go off my bowling? And everyone's a little bit different. Everyone releases it from a different point. So that backward square might be 10 meters either side for different players, but it was a lot of trial and error and trying to figure out if I miss, because a perfect Yorker goes nowhere, right? It gets trapped down and goes for one. Or zero. Hopefully it goes through to the keeper. But it's when you miss it, where does that floured edge go? What line does that go on if you've created an angle to a right-hander being a left-hander? Or where does, when you miss your length and get a little bit straight, where can they hit it? Okay, they can hit it to extra cover, but they're still struggling with the angle to hit it to long off. So I was trying to figure all of that kind of stuff out. So when I made a mistake, because you're always going to make mistakes in this game, ideally you're going to want to execute perfectly like a Bumrah or a Patirana, but for us mere mortals who don't have that skill, you've got to have the ability to know where your miss is going to get hit. So a lot of your fields are for that, which is probably a different way of thinking than a lot of people, and I probably think that's why probably people thought I was a little bit too funky at times, but there was definitely a method behind the madness.
Do you think that is that what stood you out, and especially going to Mumbai and playing the IPL, that you were brave enough to try these different things and do something different, that it kind of, they liked that? Did they get around that and embrace that and maximize that?
I think the first, from what I understand with the Mumbai stuff, is just effort. I think when it gets to the IPL, I think the occasion is always going to be very difficult for a lot of players. And I think one thing I kind of pride myself on is always giving like maximum effort. And whatever the day is, I'm going to turn up and give 100%. And I'm never going to waltz in and not care. So I think that's probably what they liked and probably why they stuck with me for a longer period of time. Over there in India, because the grounds are small, the wickets are good, it's very much like New Zealand. That's why I think New Zealand white ball bowlers tend to go better in India than, say, Australian white ball bowlers in general, because we're used to playing on smaller grounds. We're used to trying to hit the corners of the crease at the death, or have a good slower ball, or have a mixture of deliveries, where I think the Aussies seem to tend to, on the whole, they're starting to get some really skilled players through. Obviously, Andrew Tye is a great death bowler, but the likes of Nathan Ellis are starting to change it up a lot more. But I think New Zealanders seem to bowl for ones, where the Aussies seem to bowl to get to hit the big boundaries. And it's a simpler death plan or a simpler strategy. So I think probably New Zealand and what we had to execute in New Zealand, either domestically or for New Zealand, definitely sets you in good stead to be able to go to the IPL and perform, because you're under pressure on our grounds, right? Great wickets. It's pretty much the same as the IPL. You just added a bit of wind in New Zealand, which makes it even more difficult.
Yeah, the wind factor, and there is a wind factor here, and that's where I guess my approach as well is like, okay, what's happening in the conditions right now? Okay, there's a big wind. All right, let's just get hit into the big wind. I had a bit of a baptism of fire in this first game, which my first experience at T10, and it just went horribly, horribly wrong. And I just kind of called back and simplified it a lot more, and thankfully have gone okay the last few games. So it's sometimes we can make it really complicated by thinking we've got to bowl a million balls, and then other days it's like you can just bowl the same ball. If you can do that, that's a skill in itself, that your ability not to think too much and just be super simple. Because there's always like phases where it's like, okay, you can't bowl the same ball twice to the same batsman, or you need to have 4 different slow balls. No, you only need 1 slow ball. But ultimately it comes down to execution. And did you nail the Yorker? And it just goes through different phases. But we've just touched on the IPL. I reckon we carry on here. And you mentioned pressure, and it is the biggest crowds in cricket. It's watching it. I've never been there, but I'm fortunate enough to play the World Cup last year in India, and just know the feeling of those grounds and the crowd. How did you deal with that pressure and being able to perform and not succumb to that kind of everything, all the noise and everything, and able just to kind of zone in? What were some of the things that you learned, what you did poorly probably at the start, and then what you did well with the whole IPL experience?
I think probably fortunately from my CD days, when we went to Champions League, Bondi was our bowling coach, so that was my first introduction to Shane Bond. And then he was with New Zealand, so we built a good relationship there. And then, lo and behold, he's the bowling coach at Mumbai. So I think at that level, unless you're incredibly skilled in executing your deliveries all the time, like there's only a few guys, as we touched on, who can do that, I think it's more about making sure that you're as prepared as possible. I think in the IPL, you need to know, yep, okay, these are my strengths. This is what I'm good at. But you also need to know when you're coming up against a guy who actually dominates your strengths, and you have to adjust your skills. And in the IPL, if you don't adjust straight away, your over can go for a lot. So if you just run in and bowl your stock ball and that's in the zone for that particular batter, you're behind the 8 ball from the start. So preparation, making sure every time I came up against a batter, I knew what my first 2 or 3 balls were going to be to him to get him out. What length, what line, what type of delivery, and also making sure that if I was under the pump, to each and every batter I was going to play against, I knew what my out ball was. How do I get out of the over? How do I get him to the other end? Again, what different angles does he hit you on? There was a period there where KL Rahul was dominating guys who had like a traditional lined fine leg at the start, because he would flick it a little bit wider than most guys, so he was getting easy boundaries, and doing the process of understanding those angles with Bondi and the analysts at Mumbai who are fantastic as well. You get that edge, that ball goes for 1, and then all of a sudden he doesn't get away, or other guys don't get away, because you've got the right fields and you've got the right strategies. So for me, it was more about preparation, and like anything in life, if you're prepared for most of the scenarios that come out in front of you, then you're putting the percentages in your favour, and that's what I think it is. I think the game of cricket, and particularly white ball cricket, under pressure, is making sure that the percentages are in your favour, not the batsman's favour, and not getting too pig-headed about, this is the way I bowl, and if I get hit, I get hit. I'm going to stay true to me. Sometimes I think you need to have that flexible mindset. That's not to say that some of those guys who are like that aren't successful. It's just when you aren't malleable, it could be in a massive game and you end up losing that game.
And like analyst work, I sometimes suffer from the analyst paralysis kind of thing, where you've looked into a guy so much.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can fall into the trap of just watching 4s and 6s.
Yep.
Or you've watched a game where he's playing in England, but you're playing in New Zealand, or playing in India. It's like a different pitch, different scenario. And I go through waves of, all right, I've really got to prepare. I've got to, I'm writing notes and I'm running full pages on guys and, this, that, and the other. And then sometimes I get into the game and I forget to play the game. And so, because I'm already, or a bowling coach or a coach has said, okay, you've got to bowl this ball today. And then you get into a game and it's like, this ball's not the ball to bowl. Or you're completely out of rhythm. Or you started poorly and you've got to, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's a challenge sometimes to find that balance.
Yeah.
To know how to prepare, or what exactly that you want to see. So in the IPL example, did you do a lot of that video analysts with the analysts?
Heaps. Loads of that stuff. And exactly what I said, we'll go through how to get them out, how do you get them off strike, where are their go-to zones, do they look on the offside for the first half of their innings like a David Warner and then switch halfway through and only go leg side. You know those patterns, so you know when batters switch gears. But look, you're exactly right. There's no harm in doing that preparation. But when you go on the field, you just got to put that to the back of your head, because conditions change, right? So quite often I had 2 of the best bowlers in the world who are part of our fast bowling attack, in Bumrah and Malinga, for a lot of that period. So quite often in the first over, we would talk about if the ball swinged, if someone bowled a slower ball, did it grip? Did they bowl a cross seamer? And the communication from the first over was there. So while you have your plans, you've also got to communicate with your other bowlers constantly to say, what did the surface do? Did one stick? Did one swing? Did one seam? That kind of stuff. So, yep, planning, do the same preparation, do that, but also know that if the conditions are conducive to a certain type of delivery that you maybe weren't going to bowl, that you've got to look at going to that option, and that's okay. A good bowling coach would understand that, and the communication on the field is probably as important as that communication off the field.
So that's preparation.
Yeah.
What about the mental side of dealing with a bad performance, or dealing with just on being at the top of your mark? So what were the things that you did that helped you to be able to perform at your best?
There was a period there where I did a lot of mindset work, and I think there's a really great book out there, maybe a bit American for a lot of people, but Relentless by Tim Grover. I don't know if you've come across that, but it's a real attitude of like wanting to be the person. Like, it's a book about Michael Jordan's trainer, talking about wanting to be that person who wants the ball in those moments. So you've got to, so even for myself, for a period there, if I knew I was under pressure, I would just remind myself just to be relentless, just try and be the best. And that would give me the confidence to go and execute. So that was just through a process of like drilling that mentally into my psyche and at training, and making sure that I was thinking like that when I was under pressure. And then in the games, you could just get that mental cue that kind of puts you back into the zone of trying to perform. And look, it doesn't work all the time. And there's definitely games where I felt like I wasn't going to perform and didn't. So you definitely go through those slumps. And I think I was very, very fortunate at that time when I did go through a couple of 2 or 3 games with Mumbai in a couple of seasons where I went for 50 a couple of times and mid-40s and had a big over, that I had such a supportive captain in Rohit Sharma. I was always the guy who felt if I performed, I'd kind of let him down. I'd let him down. And I'd go up to him and just say, look, mate, I'm sorry. He goes, and he'd always turn to me and say, don't worry about it, mate. You'll win me the next game. And just for a leader to turn around and kind of say that to you, that picks you up. And there's been other people who have been like that. Brendan McCullum was like that as well as a leader. When I came into the New Zealand side, I was very raw. I'd only played a season and a half after my hip surgeries, and I just charged in and just hit the wicket. I didn't have the skills that we're talking about, knuckles and wide Yorkers and all that kind of stuff. And he just called me as rocks or diamonds.
Yeah.
He just said, you're either going to be really, really good or you're going to be shit. And I hopefully you're better. Hopefully your diamonds more than your rocks. So yeah. Look, and even at that time, for him to say that to me, I was very nervous. For him to say, it's okay if you're bad, just try be good more than not, and that you are going to fail, kind of made me feel like, oh, it's okay. If I go for runs, I'll take a chance trying to get someone out.
Yeah.
It's okay. So as I progressed my career with New Zealand, there was more expectations on me and from the likes of Brendan and that to be better, more consistent. But at the start of my career, that was probably the best thing anyone could have said to me. And it's along the lines of what Rohit said after bad performances. It's all good. You're going to win me the next game. And that makes you feel, okay, cool, no stress. But I also find in those moments, as having a tough year, 1 year at Mumbai, and Mitchell Johnson was there. And I grew up idolising Mitchell Johnson. I was so nervous to meet him. Because, they say don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
And he was the nicest bloke ever. And we were competing for a spot. And he was bowling gas in the nets, and I'd had a couple of bad performances, but he'd always say, oh, mate, do you want to come to my room for a tea? And we'd just sit there and have a tea and have a chat. And he would also help me in that mindset, and vice versa, just talking to someone else and talking bad performances through, or even good performances, and having that support network within your team is massive as well. So any cricketers out there who, I guess, their mate has a bad game, don't underestimate how important it is for you to get your arm around that bloke and go and have a tea or have a beer or have a conversation and just let them vent. Yeah. Let them just get it out and be there as a support, because it makes a massive difference for them rebounding as quickly as possible, which is also better for the team.
And we had that in the water. Yeah. That was we came after the game, had an absolute stinker in my first game, and I was a little bit, the lights, they were still on, but my mind was a little bit oh my God, that is super embarrassing. I'm so embarrassed right now. And we went to the water, and we're in the water, and the sun's setting. It's a beautiful location. And it was actually just nice for 5-10 minutes just to be able to kind of air some things out. You're saying, just relax, good player, it just happens, it's cricket, da-da-da. And even if we don't solve the problem or anything like that, it's just nice to have that connection, because a lot of the times in a lot of these tournaments, you are on the other side of the world, you're in a hotel room by yourself, and when you have a bad performance, you actually start to think that, all right, people won't like me now, or my personality's, in question, or I'm not a good player. Okay. And quite often people will go, all right, we'll just let them chill out and do their thing. But you're right. If you do knock on the door and say, come on, man, let's go for a beer or a Diet Coke, message them. I had a couple messages from some of the guys in the team, and it was brilliant. It was just a nice reminder that was okay, cool. And even some of the guys said, I was going to message you, but I wasn't really sure. Message. Always message, because you do feel a little bit alone. And it's hard to make eye contact with people because you're I'm super embarrassed. And then it's super important for your leaders to talk to you. I've been in situations where you've had a bad game and people are kind of avoiding you, and you just double down on thinking that, all right, now he really thinks I'm shit. And so that is brilliant. That Rohit Sharma, Brendan McCullum. Speaking of your New Zealand career, you were the fastest to reach 50 wickets. ODI cricket, rocks and diamonds. Seemed like a lot of diamonds in that first 13 matches.
Yeah.
Or 20 matches, whatever, I don't know what it was, but and the third fastest all time, which is amazing. But that support is really important. Did you work with any sports psychologists? Did your wife, having that network, your parents, your friends, what was kind of mentors? You talked about Kerry Wormsley. Did you identify those people that you could go to early?
My family was really, really massive for me. My old man was a big part of that person you could talk to outside of the system, and I think that's also important, that when you're in a team environment, that you have someone who you can consult with outside of the system. Even just to vent and just get a little bit of clarity. Different people along the way. Kind of everything just came together during that period, which was awesome. Also went through very tough period during that time as well, and it, you kind of I lost my dad during that period as well. So that was really difficult to lose that crux, that person who you kind of relied on, and so it was difficult period. And it looks like everything's good on the surface and things are going well. And then I guess that's why when things started to not go well, I probably struggled a little bit more because I didn't have that person who I relied on so much up until that point. So there's a few moments there which were pretty crazy. And looking back on it, he passed away before the tour to the UAE to play Pakistan. So just in the run up to World Cup selection in
2015.
Yeah. That's a bit of a crazy story, bro. This will be whether people believe in the paranormal or anything like that. But before I throw it out there for you. Never believed in ghosts or anything, or not overly religious, but my old man died of motor neuron, and I didn't really want to go away to Worcester because he was struggling quite a bit, and he kind of wrote, he couldn't really speak, and he wrote a message that I want you to go. It kind of make me happy for you to go overseas and just keep on playing. Don't let me hold you back. And so I was over there in Worcester, and then he got moved to the hospice and was obviously getting pretty close to passing away. And I was asleep one night in Worcester, and he come to me in my dreams, and he goes, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay." Mm-hmm. And then I woke up to my mum ringing me and saying that he just passed away. And I don't know why he came to me at that moment, and I don't know how, but just kind of made me realise that no matter how hard things get in your career or in your life, that there's always a way of those loved people or the loved ones or the people who support you being closer than you actually think. So in hard times, I kind of look back at that and know that there's a way that he'll be trying to communicate with me to kind of pick you up when you're down, and it's kind of give me a little bit of belief in the positivity of the use of positive thoughts and messaging for people. So yeah, so it's not all roses, and on that tour, and the reason I bring it up is because on that tour, obviously I was in the midst of trying to make the World Cup squad, but also had always been taking wickets, and performing well for New Zealand. And I know on that tour, in the first game, I performed poorly. I got our team off to a terrible start, and I heard about it at the end of the game as well, from a couple of people. So, and in that game, I was actually Kane came to me in my room and just said, "Hey, you're right, mate. No, same thing, support thing. Come and talk to you after the game." And I was like, yeah, I'm all right, and tough, like being tough about it. Everything's okay, sweet as. Got to the next game, and I think my first over got whacked again. And I just remember being down at third man in an international, my eyes just being full of water because I was like, I shouldn't be here. I should have been home with my family. I've been trying to be tough and hold it all in, and because I was so desperate to play for New Zealand for the World Cup, that I kind of hadn't put my grieving first. And yeah, I look back at it now and I go, what would have been the harm of me missing that tour? Would I have missed the World Cup? Maybe not. But at the time, I thought I was doing the right thing for my dad. He would have wanted me to do that, but I think it probably had like lasting effects on my enjoyment of playing for New Zealand, and also just feeling a bit more isolated because I hadn't dealt with what I was going through. So yeah, it kind of made me realise that everybody in your team has got something else going on, and now I'm moving into coaching. It's probably given me a more well-rounded outlook on people and how important their lives outside and how they're dealing with whatever they're going through can have a significant impact on their performance, and identifying when you need to actually pull back or when you need to be there to support them or give them a little bit more of a push. So it's been a fascinating experience. It's not it's one of those fascinating journeys that you just look at someone on the outside and you don't know what kind of journey people have had, and why they make certain decisions in their career or in their life. But there's always something there, isn't it?
Man, Mitch, thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm sure that brings up a lot of emotions. And you're right. Like from the outside looking in, I only played against you in that time, and I probably watched maybe some of that game, and you're thinking you're purely just judging on the performance. Oh well, Mitch is out of form, but you don't actually know all the minutes and hours that are leading up to that game and what you're thinking and feeling throughout that game as well, where you are physically in a place, but you're mentally not there. And like I said, you made a decision to stay, and how I kind of look at that is like you made the best decision that you thought at that very time. Hindsight is a wonderful thing that you can think, oh, I should have done this, that. But at the time, you had your dad's message. You were doing what you thought was best to play the World Cup. But you're right. Not everyone's bulletproof. Not everyone's just, can compartmentalize different situations. And I think that's where, the relationship, and I'm glad that Kane came to the room that time and actually reached out and was able to do that. But I think through what you've experienced, and like I can't imagine losing a parent. The only thing I can relate it to is my grandfather. I was about to play a game in Nelson, and he passed away. And the same thing, like I held it together, played the match because I was like, I got to play this match. Got hit for 70 off my 10 overs, didn't take a wicket, didn't score any runs. And then I think I took a catch at the very end of the game, and I was like, I did something for my grandpa. I did at least something, and then boof, tears. I couldn't hold it back, and I was just like, the feeling of loss. But I think there's like a real magic now in your coaching moving forward is you've got such a great memory of your father. You had to deal with that at the highest level, that you are probably going to be able to recognize that in a player. And you're not going to just judge them on their performance of that day. Okay, your front arm or whatever it is. You're actually going to go, all right, let's go for a coffee. Is everything, okay? And I think that's what I've felt since being here with you, where we've never had a conversation longer than probably 10 minutes before this. But it's actually really nice to actually have a week together and discuss different things. And, it's your daughter's 3rd birthday today in New Zealand. And you're about to have a big Zoom session in about an hour or so, and you have that special moment with her and your family. And there's like the guy that I played against is not necessarily the guy that I'm sitting with today, who I'm getting to know now, which is really special for me because, and again, don't judge a book by the cover. Just because he's, he looks like this big, hard, nasty, fast bowler. There are different layers and things that guys always have to deal with. But that's super special. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And that's, I guess, with your international career, when you peel it right back to how you kind of visualize your career, and you think, all right, successful career is going to be, all right, I'm going to play for the New Zealand at 21, and then I'm going to play 100 test matches, and I'm going to play 200 ODIs and 200 T20s. I'm going to play IPL, and I'm going to win the World Cup, and there's like this dream that you have, and you've ticked off a lot of those on that list. But again, it's not all linear. It's ups and downs, and your career was kind of like that in the sense that there was some super highs and then super lows. And the interesting part about your career, and the thing that you didn't quite probably realize when you started, is the whole franchise cricket world. And you were one of the first guys to actually go that route and focus on the franchise cricket. So what was that like going and committing? We'll say committing, but going down that route and being willing to give up a New Zealand contract, give up opportunities in New Zealand to chase that franchise cricket. Whereas we sit here today, Kane, Lockie, Milne, Trent, a lot of New Zealand guys are turning down their contracts to play franchise cricket because it's huge. 8 years ago, that wasn't the case.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't when I gave it up. It was It was an interesting conversation. It was you had rankings come out when it came to your contracts, and you get ranked at a certain point. And we just come off the back of a Champions Trophy where I was obviously in the 15 in the Champions Trophy, and then my ranking in the contract list was lower than I thought it was going to be. So I asked for my rankings in each format, and I think I was ranked maybe 16 or 17 in white ball cricket, or even though I'd just been on the Champions Trophy and two guys had retired, Luke Ronke and Chetan Patel. So I was kind of trying to figure out where I was at with New Zealand. And so you don't really get any kind of negotiation. The contract list doesn't change once they make their minds up. They don't come back to you and say, yeah, we got that wrong. They just don't do it. So it is what it is, and you suck it up. And I guess the next question is where are you and in consideration for in the formats? And I got an offer to go to South Africa to play T20 cricket during our red ball period, which is the norm now. We're talking about now, like you can do that, right? The New Zealand contracted guys only have to be available for the Super Smash. So this is back when if you're contracted or ranked in red ball cricket, which I was ranked number 21 for New Zealand red ball cricket, that you kind of couldn't leave. But I thought I'd ask the question at least and kind of see, hey, can I go and do this tour? Because it's during our red ball stuff. How many injuries need to happen for me to play? And they were like, well, Hess was pretty open and honest, and he was like, well, 3 or 4 at least, probably 5 or 6, because there were some good guys who were performing well. And I was like, would it be all right if I go away and play this tournament during this period? And I went down to Christchurch. I met with Players Association, high performance manager Hess, and they were like happy for me to go and play and be back available for the white ball summer. And then that night, after we kind of had an agreement on that, Mike Hussey rang me from the Thunder and said that, would you like to come over and play for the Thunder? What would it take, basically? And so I had 2 opportunities on the table at that time. And then basically from going from everyone being okay with me going and playing the SA T20 comp and going over there and playing white ball instead of red ball to get ready for our white ball summer, message came back from the CEO saying, no, he's got to play red ball cricket because we ranked him in it, which in my mind was like ludicrous, because I was obviously just a white ball player to New Zealand, and going over there and playing white ball cricket T20 under pressure, executing your skills, which takes some time to get right, and get some games under your belt so you can come back and perform for New Zealand, was just a smart decision. And I thought the other, like Hess and High Performance, all had the right idea. And to have him come over the top and kind of say, no, he's got to stay, or he's got to give up his contract. At that point, bro, I was like, okay, we're a bit backwards here, because you're restricting. You've ranked me so low, and back then the contracts weren't great. Like they were okay, but they were not great. They're not what they are now. To stop financial gain, but more so from my side, honing the skills that I needed to get better, to perform for New Zealand. I thought it was a bit backwards at the time, and I still think it's backwards, and I think it was the wrong decision, as we're seeing what's happening now. So I was just like, well, do you know what? I'm going to go. I don't, if it's going to be like that, I won't enjoy my cricket in New Zealand, because I'm playing a format of the game where New Zealand really don't see me playing. I'd been on 2 test tours before that, and then obviously I'm glad that they were honest in saying that you probably there's a few guys who've gone ahead of you now. I was like, okay, I'm going to go. And plus I'd grown up in Aussie as well, and I grew up watching the Aussie cricket team and idolising a lot of those players. I was like, I hadn't played in Aussie. We went to the final at the MCG. I didn't play. And so it was almost, I wanted to go and play there. That's where my dad watched his last game of cricket. international game of cricket was a test between Ricky Ponting and Tendulkar over at the MCG. So I just felt like something was calling me to go. And again, it comes back to those connections. I just wanted to play on the MCG because Dad had always, leading up into the World Cup, was always like, I can't wait. I hope you guys get to the finals so we can go back to the MCG and watch you play at the MCG. So I was like, I've got to go play there. So that was part of it as well. But I think the decision at the time was, if I'm going to be honest, a bit backwards. But that's fine. It'll be a part of the time. And look what it's turned into now. It's there's a lot of opportunities for our guys out there. And people will say, there's no loyalty now to New Zealand. And I think if we had have probably let more guys go earlier, I think we would see guys develop faster. What I found on the T20 franchise circuit was my skill development, the conversations I had with other people, even from a batting point of view and a bowling point of view. I learned so much, and I learned a lot quickly. I was sharing like changing rooms with, Mahela, Ricky Ponting. You talk to AB de Villiers, you talk to all these guys, you're in teams of Pollard, Russell, all these guys. You just learn so much. Like, you just learn so much. And the way I see it, if guys aren't playing for New Zealand, if they were playing in 3 or 4 franchise tournaments around the world, instead of playing 15 to 20 games in New Zealand, these guys could be playing 50, 60 games a year. And getting 3-4 times the volume of cricket and 3-4 times the learning, because while we have got some good resources and some good coaches in New Zealand, and we've got some very good players as well, we also don't have the access to the best all the time, right? And these guys who are playing these tournaments are talking to the best players in the world, and they're upskilling. There's a reason why Glenn Phillips was probably our best T20 batter at the World Cup, because he's been on that circuit for a while. While obviously when he was on domestic, he was playing as many of those comps as he possibly could. He was playing more games than everyone else. So I think there's a real argument for those being really good for New Zealand's cricketing development. It's not going to be great for Test cricket. But in terms of producing better cricketers and them learning faster, developing faster, I think it's a great idea, the point that we're getting to now. And look, I think if you were in charge of New Zealand cricket 10 years ago, you probably would have liked to maybe invest in a couple of these teams around the world and look at it as a pathway for your players and your coaches to go and learn off the best players. Buy a couple of the best players to be in your team and have 4 or 5 young guys in there learning off them, and take some of your coaches over there to learn off the best players, or learn off a good coach, or have those conversations at the bar or at the ground after the game. And it's probably a missed opportunity on the whole, because we wanted to protect the integrity of Test cricket being the pinnacle of cricket. And look, hey, we all love Test cricket, but it's probably held us back in a little bit of development of the next group of guys coming through. So, it's an interesting spot that I think New Zealand cricket's in at the moment. But I see they're trying to start to move towards a bit more of a, just more of a sharing, flexible kind of model, which we'll see how it works. I think it's probably the right direction, if I'm honest.
It's tough. It is really tough, because if you're sitting in New Zealand cricket's shoes, they're trying to hold the integrity of the contracts, the game within New Zealand.
Definitely.
And so they've got to make decisions on that front. And then from a player's point of view, there's all these opportunities. There's contracts in T10, T20 over in the UK. There's lots of avenues you can go down.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make the best decisions for themselves as well. And if you ask every player, they all want to play for New Zealand. They all want to play international cricket.
Yep.
And when they do play for international cricket, they want to be the best cricketers they can possibly be. And they want to be in a mindset and a headspace and within an environment that you feel supported and you feel backed. And there's no better feeling. And it doesn't necessarily have to be cricket, but even if a workplace goes, okay, I'm going to support you with that decision, I want you to go give that 100%, and I want you to come back to us better than what you were. That player is probably more likely, or that person is more likely to come back.
100%.
I'm going to be loyal to
100%.
these guys because they gave me the freedom, and they, Finn Allen and Seifert, these guys are going over to play the Big Bash this year. They're still young guys, still two of the best batsmen that we've got within the country.
Yeah.
And, New Zealand cricket would be in their best interest to keep supporting those guys and keep the door open for those guys and not shut that door, because their experience over that in that tournament is just going to elevate, their performance for New Zealand when we get to the next T20 World Cup or 50 over World Cup. And it's definitely like I've been lucky enough to go down the Dutch route and play these different tournaments. And you come back to New Zealand and I've just experienced, playing in India in front of packed crowds, and now I remember playing in Bangalore on the 15th of November in front of 30,000 people, getting hit for 107 off my 10 overs, and then literally 5 days later, I'm bowling to no one at the Basin Reserve into the wind, and it was quiet, and I could hear my thoughts. But I felt more confident. I felt that I've upskilled, and I think it's a massive balancing act. Now it's a lot more open and freedom, and there's a case by case conversation with all that. But I commend your kind of bravery back then to be able to go, you know what, I can see where this is heading. I'm gonna take it on. The part that you probably didn't expect was COVID, and that kind of threw a bit of a spanner in the work, because you're kind of 34 at COVID. Still had, a number of years to play. You'd made some investment into, F45 and gyms, and having spoken to you the last kind of week or so, that obviously was a bit of an impact in terms of being able to, once cricket got up and running again after COVID, to get back into cricket mode. Because you had obligations on the work side, and career transitioning is one of the hardest things that we all experience as sports people, or just in general. How was that period of knowing that you could probably still play, but being restricted by the obligations that you at the gym and where you're at right now?
It was terribly frustrating. I guess all those owner operators and businesses out there, small businesses out there, will probably have the same view on how everything transpired during COVID. We were restricted into the ground. Most of small businesses, you've seen them now, they're going under. They've just been screwed down, and it hasn't bounced back as was promised. And what the government thought, I guess, was the right approach, and being so cautious actually has killed us and killed our economy. And for us, our business relied on people being able to come into our gym, and every time Jacinda stood up on that podium, the last two sentences she would say is remember, bars are hot spots and gyms are hot spots, so be very careful and stay away, basically. So every time, it was just every single time that gyms and bars were hot spots. And it was, we had pretty much 4 lockdowns, and every lockdown we lost 30% of our membership. So we went from a good investment, a great product, getting great results for people, contributing to the community, to having lost everything that we work hard for, and to get it to that point. And when it comes to gyms, it's a long sales process to convince people that they're not too busy to come in for 45 minutes a day to get some movement and try and encourage them to be active, and for particularly through that period, it would be great for a lot of people's mental space, their psyche, physically as well. Obviously, we know the benefits, but it was a very difficult period, and every time we kind of clawed some members back and got people back into gym and getting healthy again, there'd be another lockdown, and then you'd lose everything again. And it was just a really testing period, and it was a period where I had to be at home to support the businesses and staff and family. And so the kind of career was on the back burner, and you go through some pretty dark days during that period as well, and you kind of lose with the going in and out and ups and downs of what was happening, in and out of lockdowns, and is your business going to survive and all that kind of stuff. You kind of stop looking after yourself, and then to get back and play cricket was a lot more difficult. So it was a tough period, and I just remember after we'd been open fully, after the lockdowns are finished, after a year, we had a member come in still wearing a mask. That the chat throughout the pandemic had scared someone that much that they didn't come back to the gym for a year and still came back with a mask and gloves and their own sanitizer. And I was just like, what have we created here? Like, I was just like, this kind of just created this fearful society, and everyone kind of, when you're customer facing all the time, while New Zealand said that we were all being kind to each other, as business owners, it didn't seem that the government was being kind to us and kind of helping us, and made it more difficult in a lot of circumstances. So kind of made you kind of resent the position that we're in. And people who were just on government jobs and in the community or anywhere just didn't know the impact that it was having on businesses, and life just went back to normal. And it was definitely a different challenge in our lives. And we shut two of them because of that, and we've got the one now, thankfully, which is going really well. So it's an interesting space, but put a halt on the cricketing career. And thankfully at that point, these Legends Leagues started popping up, and you get to go and play some cricket again and connect with some old friends. And I remember the first Legends League I did, sitting there with 4 or 5 past cricketers first night at dinner, and obviously first time there was basically a tournament for us to play after COVID. And everyone going around the table and just saying, how you going? Just came from nowhere. It's just normal chat. And then like one bloke just said, how's everyone going? It's been a pretty shit period for me and the family back home. And then everyone kind of had a similar story. And everyone had different ways that they kind of were trying to cope with it. And it was like a sharing environment. And again, it's one of those situations where you realise, oh man, okay, once guys finish cricket, it's really difficult to be in a good mental space and move on. That moving on from cricket and going to the next part of your career, it's very, very difficult. And while there are players' associations who are putting good processes in place to try and help people deal with that, not everyone's happy or open enough to talk about it. So kind of really enjoyed that there are Legends Leagues out there now, because you go and connect with the same guys every year, or you're messaging throughout the year and checking in on each other, and kind of brought that brotherhood back, which as cricketers, we live in teams our whole lives, right? And so once that team goes, and this will be one of the interesting things for when you finish, is that you realise that as soon as you don't make a team or you finish your career, no one gives a shit about you. Like, no one cares. Everything just moves on. And the mates, the people who you thought you were mates in your team, unless you like live close to them or you're really good mates, they just move on with their lives as well. And it's no sweat off their back or anything like that. So you go through a period of where you feel really, really alone, I guess, because you're so used to being in a team environment and around people all the time and having that social interaction, and you look for it, and then you think the connections that you made, they, were just, because you're always traveling with people. You're always in that environment. So it's a fascinating thing to go through as an athlete. So I kind of saw Thierry Henry talk about something similar. He kind of talked about, his was more around like a performance kind of view, but he said you have two careers. You have your career, when you finish playing, and then your career after, and you've got to know that you're starting again, and you've got to get those building blocks in place to be able to get to that, that next part of your life. But I know I'm going a different angle here, but what he did say, and this will probably resonate with any young cricketers or people out there now, or people even on the circuit now who are, 20, 26, 27, 28. He said, think about if you stopped your career at 35 and you died then, how would you look back at your life? As your sporting career being your life, you died at 35, like your career dies at 35, and you get to look back at that. Would you be happy with the amount of effort you put in, the sacrifices that you made, or would you regret having those extra beers or skipping that gym session, or, not putting effort in that training, or, getting muddled up in bad situations? Would you regret those decisions that you made? And kind of made me wish that I had probably also known that a little bit earlier. I was very diligent when I was in big tournaments, but outside of that, I would pretty much always come home and have a couple of weeks benders and blow out. So kind of made me wish I kind of knew that advice earlier. And I think for any young cricketers out there or athletes out there to kind of understand that, hey, if your career finishes at this point, do you think everything you've put in, you can live with that? You'd be satisfied that you lived a good life in your sporting career? Because there's a lot of stuff going out there now, like it's a great lifestyle, and it is a great job. It's a great lifestyle, and if you want to kind of make those choices in life, then that all power to you. But not everyone can perform like that. And would you look back with regrets?
Wow, there's so much to unpick, and that connection I heard was an important one, but also just what you're talking about there in terms of looking back and I wish I did this better, I wish I did that better. And with a career and success, and which you had, and success comes money, comes opportunities, comes able to access the things and vices that kind of come into your array. And I can imagine it gets hard to kind of push those away. When you don't really have them, you don't really think about it, and it's actually kind of easy. It's like, well, I can't afford that. Well, no, I can't go out. I'm trying my butt right now just to make the team. When you get to the other end of it, I can imagine it can be hard, because it's like, oh, okay, cool, I've made it now. I can just coast. Is this kind of the what you're talking about in terms of where you got at? Sometimes with your parts of your career where it's like, okay, cool, I've reached that level. All right, cool, it's going to last forever, and then it comes down again. Listening to you today and knowing your story, there's a lot of resilience in you. You spoke about your father's passing, the gym situation. Like, there's so much resilience in you that I just have a feeling moving forward that you're going to always. Mitch is always going to pick himself back up and go again, which is really cool to find out. But that I'm left, right, and center in terms of what I'm trying to say. But the connection part after finishing your career is an interesting part. Because we're lucky that we turn up every day and there's 15 guys to hang out with, talk shit with, banter, compete with. Happy days. We go home, and then that suddenly stops. And to be able to find that connection piece, it must be super tough to find that, especially because everyone else's lives outside of the cricket bubble, your schoolmates, your university mates, they've all kind of led different lives, and you've had a different style of living. And it's how to reconnect. So how have you gone about feeling that feeling you had at the Legends League and be able to connect? What's your kind of way you're gonna move forward in terms of finding that connection pieces to kind of get what you had with cricket now moving forward in terms of your career, whether it be the coaching, whether it be the media stuff, whether it be the continuing with the gym or your next project. How are you going to gain that connection?
Yeah, look, I think when you've got money, you've got fame, not to the degree that other people have, but your circles gets quite big, and you also feel like you want to share that with everyone, and you quite quickly realise that there's only probably a handful of people who are worth putting energy and time into. So I think now I've got a couple of really good mates who we have a couple of WhatsApp groups who you stay in touch with, and it's like a weekly kind of check-in. You catch up with them as well, go for lunch, go and play some golf, and you try and make sure that you make that time, because I think at the end of the career or after your career, work gets busy, family gets busy, and as blokes, we kind of often we don't need to see each other all the time, but we still need to stay connected, and we don't do it very well. So just trying to make sure that you make the effort for other people, and if they're good people, they reciprocate that effort. And I think that's when you know that if you're always the one texting first or something like that, there's that kind of stuff. So you figure it out who's important to you, and you make effort to be there for those people. And it doesn't need to be a big circle. You always talk about the big guys, the big athletes, talking about how small their circle really is, and that's true. And I think you quite often, when you're going through those periods of success, everyone's kind of hanging on you, kind of thing. So it's an interesting period and thing to go through. So yeah, it's different. Everyone will be different, right? Some guys will be able to maintain those circles, some guys won't. But just knowing that you've got a couple of close people, it doesn't need to be more than one or two. It's just know that you've got some people who that. I listened to someone say the other day, like, if you had one phone call, if you're in jail in South America and they were going to execute you in 24 hours, like, what person would you ring to get it? And they're going to get on the plane and try to get you out. It's like, have that kind of mentality, like, who would, if I rang them, who would pick up the phone and be there, and then put your energy into those relationships as opposed to the superficial kind of relationships. I think a lot of people waste a lot of energy on those types of people.
Oh man, I can relate to that so much, because I'm very much an open book, extroverted guy, and I want to have like a million friendships. And even coming into these tournaments, and you meet quite some big names that you've seen on TV, and you're like, cool, I want to make a good connection with him. I want to be his mate. But then you kind of get into a situation where you're having a conversation, you're like, oh, okay, we're actually not really gelling here. And this is purely like a chemistry thing where it's like, okay, this is not quite back and forth right now.
Yeah.
I'm making a lot of effort, not getting much back. And we can be guilty that we go, oh no, but it'd be cool to be his friend. And so you make more effort and you waste a lot of energy and you get nothing back. Whereas there's a guy who's giving you a bit of energy back, but you're like, oh no, but that friendship would be cooler to have. And you forget that there's this guy on the other hand is actually giving you some back, and you're actually going to go away from a hangout with that guy far better because it was the back and forth feeling rather than trying to chase to be best mates with a superstar.
Yeah, and quite often those relationships you're chasing with those guys come with them buying you dinner or buying you drinks and stuff like that. You're like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Whereas, that other bloke who you both probably split the bill, but you have great conversation, great connection, and it might be something that carries forward is important to identify. But that being said, it's pretty cool to hang out with some of those big boys.
Well, yeah, exactly. And, It does. It's interesting to get an insight to their world and, what it's like.
Oh, it's next level.
And it's some of the things I've heard in the last kind of 3 or 4 weeks. I've been at GT20 and been here in the Caymans. They're, some of the numbers, they've thrown around with contract levels. And I hang out with this person, or I've got this person's dinner, or what. And you're just sitting there going, wow, I'm just hoping that I can pay my mortgage in the next month. And then I'm happy I can pay for, my wife to come to the next trip. And that's like, I'm at that level. But the relationships, and it's the ability to understand, okay, who are the people that are giving you energy? Who are the givers? That they'll, when you message, they'll message back. Or they'll message out of nowhere and say, let's go hang out, let's go for a coffee. And I really am quite sensitive to that as well. And there have been probably a number of people that I've probably spent too much energy on, and I could have given that energy to someone that's actually going to absorb that.
Or to yourself.
Or to yourself, exactly. Yeah. And that's, sometimes a challenge within a team environment as well, where, there's 15 guys, and you go into the changing room, and you think, all right, I'm going to be best mates with all 15 of these guys. But the reality is that all different ages.
Yep.
All different stages, different backgrounds, different, wallet sizes, different, family situations, single, married, kids, different cultures, there's like a whole bunch of things. And there's probably 4 guys that you're going to instantly connect with. You don't have to make an effort. It just flows. It's great.
Yeah.
There's 4 guys that you're nice, you get on quite well, but you kind of have the same small talk conversation every single time. And then there's probably 4 guys that, for whatever reason, there's just no connection. You respect, you respect each other, and you'd hope that other person and you are training hard, doing all the right things to prepare so that when we walk on the field, you can look around and go, cool, all right, everyone here I've seen work hard and give themselves the best chance to succeed. So when we compete, I know everyone's got they're trying to win the game. And that's just the nature of a team sometimes, is you're not necessarily going to get on with everyone in the team.
Yeah.
And I think the sooner you can accept that and make sure that you do your best to prepare and give 100% effort, it can be a lot of weight off your shoulders.
Yeah.
Especially socially. Yeah. Within a team environment.
Definitely. You also touched on one of the things that I struggle with in those, or have struggled with in those team environments, is when guys aren't giving 100% or ticking those boxes, and that's a hard hurdle to get over as well, right? When you're giving 110%, but someone's not bringing the same energy or the same effort to a campaign or to the team, and they're sucking energy from the team, and it's trying to not let that kind of stuff get to you as well. I think that's quite important. I think probably, if that kind of stuff happens, I feel like it, and a lot of teams I've been in, it just gets let to ride for a little bit too long, and you start getting frustrated and almost anxious and that's when stuff gets said, right, and can disrupt team environments. So it's also trying to find connections with, even if you don't get along with them particularly well, it's trying to find ways that you can still connect with them, so can challenge them in the right way to be able to get to the level that they need to for the team. And I guess that's probably the hardest thing of the franchise stuff, because you are so disconnected. You don't know the guys very well. You don't know how they prepare or what their work ethic is. Are they better to have a hit before or after, or not at all? It's really fascinating scope, but it's a little bit easier when you're in New Zealand to kind of build that culture of working together and knowing that your mate's done the same work to get in the trenches.
And sometimes guys, you probably judge them, they're not making an effort, or they haven't done this and that. A lot of the times they actually don't know, especially younger guys, and they have to have those hard lessons of, okay, you're not meant to drink after you get injured.
Yeah.
Or like an injury. That's probably, that's not, I learned that, like, I get injured. And I remember Peter Fulton, I pulled my side in a game, and after the game, we won the game. We're in the change room and we're all having beers. And I grabbed a beer and I opened it up and I'm about to take a sip. And Peter Fulton was like, "What are you doing? You're injured." I was like, "Oh no, I was keen to have a beer." He's like, "No.
Yeah.
Like, we need you for the the rest of the season. So you having a beer now is going to hamper your injury, and that's not a good move." And I was like, "Oh, whoa, okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting." And it could be a skill thing, or hitting balls, or a communication thing where more often than not, guys actually don't know what to do, and so we probably are quickly to judge. Oh, he's not doing the right thing.
Yeah. Seen a lot of really good cricketers recently. Since I've retired, having conversations with a few guys from varying associations, kind of ask me like what I did as a bowler, and I laid out basically what my preparation was. And the first question I asked one of the guys was, "Well, when we were here, when I was playing, did you?" what did you think I did when I went home? Because a lot of the guys were going to the beach or going to festivals or, going and playing golf. Yep, I went and played golf a lot of the time. But I had to say to him, like, "Mate, how often do you see Lockie Ferguson on Instagram down at Parnell Nets?" Quite a lot. And I would go and bowl off 4 or 5 paces if something wasn't right at training, or I was working on something. I would either be at training early and get my work done before people were there, or I'd be down at Howard Pakuranga Nets for an hour or so bowling 100 balls off 6 paces to try and get timing or work on something or get my wrist right or get a delivery right. And I said, I have to ask to a lot of these guys exactly what you're saying, like, how are you going to get better if you're only bowling 5 overs a day, 15, 20 overs a week? How are you going to get the volume of skill? Like, how are you going to increase your ability? And it was a real eye-opener for a few of them to realize that if they want to be better, they've got to do work outside rather than, training finishes, when are we meeting at the beach? Or when are we shooting up north for a couple of days? And that's where I think cricket's got to with so many contracts and so many opportunities, is that guys can coast a little bit more because there's an element of job security. Not overly secure in New Zealand, right? We're 1-year contracts, but you're not really knowing that there's someone there working harder than you. So they kind of don't know what's going on. So yeah, it was eye-opening for a lot of them to realise how much work you actually have to put in. That you're not going to improve to the level that you want to improve. Because I reckon you've got like a 3-year window now as a young cricketer if you get a contract. And if you haven't improved in that time considerably to become like a senior player, I think quite often they're looking for the next guy. So you really have to focus on doing that extra session a day or extra 2 or 3 sessions a week, whether it's bowling or batting or fielding or running or gym outside the team environment, because that's the only way you're going to get ahead in your team environment as well. But also obviously make sure that you have a long career as opposed to the amount of guys who come in for 1 or 2 years now and then they don't play many games in and out and then they drop off. They, like you say, they probably didn't know that they weren't doing the right amount of work to get better and improve and succeed at that level. And there's a lot of really good cricketers who would have been successful if they'd kind of done that extra work, even in the last couple of years, who I could have seen have good first-class careers, maybe contributing to New Zealand or franchises, who are probably gone by the wayside now.
Yeah, it's amazing to see cricketers kind of waste opportunities, and then there's other cricketers that they do every single little thing correct, but for whatever reason, they just don't, make it.
But they can look back on their career, exactly what we're talking about. The end of their career, did I do everything I possibly could to be successful?
They can sleep at night.
Sleep at night.
Yeah.
The worst scenario would be having regret.
And that's where I kind of look forward in my career now 33 10 years ago, 15 years ago is kind of like, okay, what's the plans next year? Are you playing? Are we not playing? Or what's your career afterwards? Like I sit here today and I go, there's so many opportunities with cricket right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep yourself fit, you can play for another 5-6 years. Minimum. At a high level.
Yep.
And so that just seems so exciting to me. There's a lot of kind of good lessons and routines and things and processes I already do naturally now that just kind of in me.
Mm-hmm.
But the excitement of getting better is exciting. Excuse me to use the same word, but that's exciting. It's like, wow, there's so much opportunity out there. All right, come on. 5 or 6 years, let's give myself the best chance. Maximize it in terms of experience-wise, in terms of financially-wise, to set myself up, in terms of enjoyment factor, and just be able to use this body while I've got it in a good state. And then once I'm done, and the day I wake up and I go, okay, cool. All right, I don't really want to get better today.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the time where I go, okay, maybe that's time to move on. Mitch, I've got to let you go here because your Zoom session with your daughter, 3-year-old birthday today is about to start. You know, you've been so generous with your time, so generous with your, open about your career, and my mind was frazzled there for a little bit, trying to work out which direction to kind of take it because you gave some nuggets of gold and you shared some really personal stuff as well, which I really appreciate. I would love to do this again at another point in time. And even with we were going to have, Josh Little here. He's a young left arm fast bowler who's 24 years old. He's got IPL experience now, but he's just on the kind of the upward trajectory. And would be super interesting to kind of see you guys interact. And I've seen you guys in the warm-ups and talking to each other and talking about different balls. And it's a really nice synergy there around left arm fast bowling, and that would be cool to kind of to do one day. But anyway, back to thank you so much, and I look forward to hopefully we're winning this afternoon, hopefully winning tomorrow,
we're winning
and getting to the final of this max 60 competition in the Cayman Islands. But Mitch, thank you so much. Enjoy the birthday party.
Cheers.
And we'll see you this afternoon at warm-ups.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right, man.
Cheers.